good morning or afternoon or wherever you are. My name is Daryl van der Pijl, and I'll be hosting this virtual event today. So let me welcome you all to the HCI Security Ask Me Anything, where we have gathered your questions up front, and we brought the product teams in to help answer those questions. So this will be more of a, real technical Ask Me Anything. So don't expect any fancy slide deck kind of things. We'll go to the questions that have been sent in. You are able to ask questions during this webinar. So it's active, it's live. We are monitoring it, and if you have any questions that are not answered during this Ask Me Anything, please let us know. Chime in, and we can help you out with that one. We have a bunch of people in the call today. The first one that's going to answer some hardening questions is Carlos. Carlos, can you please introduce yourself a little bit?
Sure. You guys hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Carlos Mayol. I'm one of the security PMs for Azure Stack HCI. I'm happy to have you here and answer some of your questions. So yeah, let's roll on. Yeah.
Let's see. Let's dive right into the first question. It's about the security hardening baselines that we've seen. And the question is, the OS config for security hardening, the baseline for Windows Server 2025 looks promising. Is it also something coming for HCI, or is it already baked in?
Yep.
Good question.
Yeah, good question. Thank you for that one. So short answer is yes, it is baked in. Actually, if you want to know a little bit more about it, it happened otherwise, right? We actually first started with OS config in Azure Stack HCI, and then we brought it into the widely used Windows Server product. Yeah, that's the way it is. But yeah, Azure Stack HCI does have it. And obviously, because they are coming into different releases, they have different set of features, because OS config has an OS component, and obviously it gets evolving over time. But yeah, it's there.
Cool. And so what's the best place to learn more? I know there's a GitHub repository with all the baselines, right? What is the best place to step into it?
Yeah, so right now, we have a small documentation of what we call the baseline security within the HCI product. So you can learn about how we bake the baseline and how we manage the specific aspects of that baseline within HCI. If you have more broad questions about what is OS config, actually we did add a new section for Windows Server. So in Windows Server 25, you can find OS config nomenclature in there, and some broadly documentation that also is a nice, a nice place for you to learn more there. Yeah.
Good. All right, next one. What is the best way of implementing Credential Guard and Windows Defender Application Control, WDAC, on Azure HCI? I know there's been a lot of WDAC, hustles going on about applications being blocked, etc. on Azure HCI. So what's the best way for it?
Yeah. Probably we could have an AMA only about application control. So maybe we want to do one at some point. I would say two things, right? The best way to implement Credential Guard and application control, it is as easy as just using the cloud deployment. So all the work and engineering work that we did for Azure Stack HCI 23 to release, it comes with those enablements by default. So basically, when you follow the wizard, you will get those enabled by default. We did all the work for you, but that only helps to some point, which is all the first party or primary components that we have in there. If you have needs to enable to enable third-party components through our application control, then you need to go through that process. Actually, we did invest quite a bit into having a decent documentation for customers to go on, enable a process of creating a supplemental policy, that would be the way to go. Actually, let me take this opportunity to tell you, you may or may not know, that we don't call WDAC anymore because we rename it. So now we call it Application Control for Business. That would be the server flavor of it. And the Smart App Control is the client flavor of it, just for you to know. But still, I wanted to keep the nomenclature as how it came to us to make sure that people understand the renaming or the rebranding. Yeah.
Cool. WDAC renamed. I mean, it's Microsoft, obviously, so we need renames, right? So
yep.
All right. Next question is about RBAC. What's the best RBAC? What's the RBAC best practices for on-premises for HCI clusters? So I'm thinking this is about RBAC from the Azure point of view, like from the portal.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Actually, I was thinking about it too, but again, right? We kind of tweak and adjust the question, but without reformulating totally the questions. This particular one, I thought it was important to tackle on, so I'm going to go ahead. So there is two ways to look at this. So we actually have two control planes: the traditional on-prem with legacy tools like MMCs and Hyper-V Manager, Cluster Manager, thing like that, and the cloud control plane, which is where this product fits better, right? And where the better story for role-based access control is built up. So for those who has been trying to get RBAC with things like Windows Admin Center or things like that in the past, there is not much progress there. I mean, you have what you have today, and it is very much limited to be a local administrator or I'm hearing myself, so let me just mute some of this. Okay, thank you. So there is no more progress there, I was saying, and basically you need to either be a local admin or be a Hyper-V administrator to do some of those privileged actions. Our goal, and that's the road ahead of us, is to invest more into the infrastructure management through the cloud control plane. The way that the team started was to bring RBAC mostly on the workloads first. So that's why you see RBAC for things like deploying extensions or to deploying AKS clusters or to deploy Arc4 VMs, that type of stuff, which are considered workloads within the scope of HCI. And we're working right now to bring RBAC to some extent into the security management story. Actually, Ellie is working on it, which is on this front. And that's the way that we're going, right? So our goal is to, at least absolutely necessary, everyone will be able to manage through the cloud control planes. That means obviously not only the UI, but the ARM templates and the REST API that we have on the cloud, etc.
Cool. Makes sense. We need to take a step back and go back to WDAC. There's a question for ISVs developing software that leverages WDAC. I already forgot the new name, I'm sorry. What changes will be coming to make implementing custom supplemental policies easier and also distributing through a centralized store, in quotes, store in quotes?
Yeah, I'm reading through that. Hey, Ernie, actually, I know Ernie very well. So far, what I can say is application control. We're keeping investing in application control. You will see very soon we're bringing a new set of scenarios for HCI specifically, actually available, some of them in Windows Server, where we're going to allow customers and obviously ISVs to feed all those events coming from the app control layer in a more digestive way and to be able to create supplemental policies easier. That's something that we are trying very hard because we understand the process to get there for each individual component and each individual ISV sometimes is harder than others. Then how you as an ISV can push those policies to to the system. We're working on it too. I cannot give you more details right now, but we're working into a solution where you as an ISV or customers can kind of manage a mechanism to get I don't know, let's call it marketplace or a repository where you can go and say, oh, let's bring this to my system. So we're working on it. We're in early stages, and one of the reasons we're working on it, just to let you know, is because we want to customers and ISVs to be able to sign up the whole policies stack. That means that each policy can be signed and only trust in the context of that specific scenario. That means customer's environment. So we're working into that design, and then obviously ISV will be part of that solution.
Got it. And then if we step to DPM or Microsoft Azure Backup Server, if we want to use that client on Azure HCI node,
we actually do have one question, if I'm not mistaken, later on. So if you don't mind, we can take that one later on. Karim is here to answer that. Yeah.
Cool. All right, stepping back to the questions. The next one is about security posture. How is that measured on Azure HCI? Secure posture, sorry.
Yep. So there is various ways that you can measure the security posture, obviously, right? So we do offer a native solution, which is through Azure policy and machine configuration. We actually do have some documentation in the Azure Stack HCI product documentation, how you can basically compare against a given policy and see that the posture that we're setting through the deployment, it's there and it keeps in that same way. That's why I think like drift control is one of the amazing things that we brought through that OS complete layer to maintain that security posture. But it's not the only one, right? I mean, because Azure Stack HCI is a customer managed system, you can actually run any other third-party component or tool to measure that posture. So it's really up to you. From our angle as a Microsoft, we recommend you to obviously go with the predefined Azure policy, which I believe it is a great way to go. And I'll actually to mention, Ellie has some news on that aspect. Like we're working to bring more experiences into that Azure Cloud Managed experience, which includes secure posture management and security management. Yeah.
Got it. Next question. What is the performance impact on the CSV? CSV stands for cluster shared volume. If I enable all security features such as BitLocker, encryption, or WDAC.
Yep. Well, if you enable everything, well, the thing is, we already enable almost, I won't say everything that we could enable, but the majority of the thing that we do enable. When you go through the deployment process in the cloud, in the portal, you will see the option for you to customize those options. When you click on that customization button, you will see everything but cluster share volume encryption is enabled. And we don't enable cluster share volume by default because we know there is a performance impact, right? So it's up to your organization to decide if you want to take that toll on that extra cycles of computing to encrypt cluster share volume. I'm reluctant to give you any number, whatever number that is, because those number depends on multiple factors. It depends on the fact that which hardware are you running, what type of workloads are you running, what type of network cards do you have, right? What kind of bandwidth do you have in there, and so on and so forth. The only thing that I can tell you is it was significant enough for us to don't enable CSV encryption by default, while everything else that we consider important is enabled by default. So it is in the magnitude in average of a 2-digit percentage, right? So something above 10%. But again, don't take that as anything that Microsoft will stand for, because it really depends on multiple factors. About everything else, yeah, go ahead.
Is it also something Microsoft is actively working on making that encryption burden less?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, every release, every OS built, we do work on those scenarios that we consider more impactful from obviously usage or usability, including performance. if you remember, we used to have a deduplication mechanism that got renewed in 25. So that new deduplication mechanism that now is shipped in 25 is coming to HCI on our next release, and that's how we do it, right? On each major OS release or interim releases, we're going to get some of those components and make it better and better over time. That's always the case. I wanted to quickly mention on WDAP because that's something that people may or may not realize how impactful or how performance impactful WDAC can be. Actually, the truth is WDAC or app control in audit mode can be a little bit more impactful than in block mode. So that's news for you. Without going into the details, WDAC, it is not super impactful because the type of usage happening in HCI, meaning if you're in a client workstation that you're continually opening applications and you might have 20, 30, 40, 50 applications that you go and run different type of applications and different binaries, you might get a little bit of more performance impact on those scenarios. But on the server side, when you have very steady workloads and steady processes that you call over and over again, WDAC won't have a bigger impact on your workloads. It's something that we measure, we understand, but we don't consider it to be a security feature that heavily impacts your performance. So you're safe there.
Yeah, makes sense from a server side. Yep, got it.
And also, Carlos, if I can jump in a little bit.
Please.
The best thing to always do, and by the way, I'm Lee Holmes. I'm a security architect on HCI. One of the things I think as anyone who's at all concerned about performance is that the number one thing that you can do is measure. And what I mean by measure is not measuring a micro scenario, like how many processes per second can I start, but the way to truly understand and represent performance for your deployment and your organization is to run a workload. And we were very conservative in the CSV thing because we didn't want to have anybody making any questions about disabling security features because they did some micro benchmark or something. But I'd be shocked if you enabled all of these and ran an actual workload that you actually run at your company and noticed any difference. And so that is the number one trick for being a performance engineer is take a scenario, a true end-to-end scenario that you care about, and run that with the different settings enabled or disabled, and get some numbers, and then make your decisions based on that. And that's something that it's really hard to make a call without understanding your actual end-to-end scenarios.
Yeah, 100% agree, Lee. Actually, we see a lot of those scenarios where people are just, as you said, micro-benching how milliseconds this or that scene took versus, and in the total compute of that scenario, it doesn't really have any impact at all. So yeah, I agree with your approach totally.
All right. Someone is challenging your statement about encryption being enabled by default or not in a cloud deployment. So I also thought that encryption is enabled by default. Is it not anymore, or have it never been? Just to make sure.
It's never been. Yeah, it's never been. And if it was at some point, it should be reverted. Yeah. So when you go through this custom option, it's always been you see already what the default is always being off by default. Yeah.
Okay. Next question coming up. How can I implement collection of security events and send it to a solution or SIEM solution?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a very broad question, but I wanted to tackle it quickly in two ways. So number one, we do enable an extensive set of events, way more than any default installation or any default Windows Server installation, because Azure Stack HCI is a security managed system, meaning there is a full set of opinions around security that we enable by default, including security auditing. And then those follows benchmark like CIS or this stick best practices. That's why you get way more events on an HCI solution rather than if you just deploy a standard Windows server, to say something. Then what you do with those events? Well, our proposal is, well, there is 3 options. Number 1 is you go with first party on the cloud that is called Sentinel. So basically there is a process for you to leverage Azure monitoring agent, right, or the AMA agent to collect those events and throw it to a Sentinel workspace. That's my preferred solution, the one that I support and the one that I'm familiar with, and I love it. But that's just one option. Then there is another option, which is you already have as on-prem SIEM, something that actually we put it from Azure Stack Hub. So we do have an Azure Stack HCI, what we call a syslog for water. So basically, you can configure Azure Stack HCI clusters nodes to forward those events, a subset of those events already predefined, to a local SIEM, something that it's already running on your network. And obviously, there is always the option, as I mentioned to you before, like Azure Stack HCI is an open managed system. You can implement your own third-party solution, whatever you want to call it, and implement that solution into the system. And then that third-party solution might come with an on-prem or a cloud or hybrid, whatever. That might be another option.
Yep, got it. All right, this was the last question on the security hardening in RBAC. So if you have any questions, put them in the Q&A. We're now moving on to the other section, which is deploy and lifecycle, which you're also going to take, Carlos, right?
Yeah, Thomas is not here yet, so yeah, okay. I get the blessing from him to answer some of those anyway. Yeah, I'll go ahead with that one. Yeah,
yeah,
shoot it out.
So what are the implications of having BitLocker enabled on the boot volume? What if DCs, domain controllers, are not accessible? Nodes can boot, and can they access CSV clustered volume data?
So yeah, so we could debate here for quite some time, but I'm going to be precise here. I think there is a meaning for this question. So one is a common misunderstanding that the only way that the BitLocker component can unlock a volume, regardless if it is the boot volume or a data volume, is through the recovery keys. That is not true. That is not the case. The actual encryption keys that we call it, or the key protector that goes along with the encryption keys, are what you actually need. So those key protectors are not necessarily the recovery keys. And common case is boot volume. We ask HCI customers to have TPM. One of the reasons is because we store the key protector as a TPM key protector. So the keys are stored in the TPM. So you don't need the DC for anything in order to talk to your TPM, right? So I think when you get that explanation, it's easy for you to understand that what I'm talking here about DCs, right? So yes, 100% of the times, at least you get into trouble and you need the recovery keys, and those recovery keys were never been saved before, as we recommend customers to do. You don't need the DCs to boot your HCI node, okay? That's the first part. So can they access the CSV data? Yes, they can access the CSV data, similar to what I told you before. So the key protector of the CSV is stored in the cluster database. So as soon as you're able to put the cluster database, the cluster server, you're going to be able to read that. And on top of that, we use another mechanism in HCI, which is documented in the Windows Server scenario, not specifically in HCI, that is called external keys. So each node will host also an external key associated to the volume where that particular volume were originally encrypted or enabled for encryption. So those two mechanisms, stored as key protectors, allow us to get access to the cluster share volume data. Okay, that's it. Yeah. So with that said, very quick, right? Very quick here. We do expect the current implementation of HCI to always be able to talk to DCs. Actually, we do have in our security baseline requirement, which I don't know if any or some of you already noticed, that you cannot log into the system using a domain account without contacting first a domain controller. We disable the account cache, and we actually have a policy to force contacting you to a domain controller in order to log in. That's on our baseline. So we expect the disease are there. But if for whatever reason you have a hiccup in your network or something happened, or you're storing the DC as a VM in the same cluster, which can be, yeah, both volumes can boot on, or the nodes can boot on the CSV data is accessible.
Yeah, and also I know that the cluster can start up without the DC being present. The only thing that you need to keep in mind if your server fails and hardware components fails, like your motherboard or TPM chip, then you don't have the keys anymore, right?
Yeah. And then obviously we mentioned this and we're working to make it even better, I would say, right? So one of the common asks, which is not in the slide deck, is if we allow customers to store the password recovery keys in Azure Key Vault. We're working to enable that. I think the first step is coming soon, but definitely without being an automated process today, the recommendation in our documentation is for you to, once you get your system up and running, your cluster is up and running, you get the recovery keys, we store them on AD. So, you know, on your computer nodes, the AD objects, you have those keys, you can retrieve them, save them somewhere safe. We consider somewhere safe also Azure Key Vault. So please do so. That's my recommendation.
Cool. This is an interesting one. What are the best practices to ensure a smooth and secure deployment of Azure HCI? I know there have been some, some struggles on deploying lately, but it seems to be smooth nowadays.
Yeah. I think when I read this, I want to read the smooth in the concept of security, right? It is true, this new cloud deployment, it is more complex, maybe, than just doing a regular or previous versions of HCI without being LCM powered or lifecycle empowered. But the truth is, the deployment process has evolved so much so quickly, thanks to Thomas and others, which I do believe now it is. I would say my quick answer is just go and deploy from the cloud. That's all you need to do. All the best practice from security angle are in there. You don't need to think through them. You don't need to think how you're going to do this hardening after the fact. It's all there. We did all the engineering work on your behalf. Kristen, you have a comment there. Please chime in.
Yes, sorry, I'm turning on the camera. Yeah, I mean, I'm probably one of those people that is doing more deployments worldwide because I'm doing maybe 3 deployments daily. And to give you some advice, I will say 2 key things that you probably want to do is train with virtual environments, because you can automate a lot of deployment steps and check where those virtual deployments are failing. And this is really important for endpoints, okay? You know that we have and we will discuss this a little bit later, but to figure out your firewall or proxy configurations, virtual deployments are helping a lot. And then the other thing is environment checker. And sometimes we are lazy to run those tools, but they are available, and this probably will help a lot on helping with the smoothness of the deployment. I just wanted to make these 2 comments.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kristen.
Moving on. How to update Azure HCI in a reliable way. We just learned that we do not need DCs to be up, right? So for the updates, what's the best way to handle that one?
So again, you can read this in various angles. The way I read this is actually what LCM does to you, right? I mean, previously to 23H2, you had previously Windows servers, then HCI clusters that you need to manage the whole update as another like Windows Server update, eventually with cluster aware update, right? Manually, and you needed to go through all that process you on your own. One of the major reasons, among many others, that the new HCI with LCM is goodness is everything that has to do with reliability and updates. Because again, we take care of everything. We you guys have no idea how many hours of people's work every month to release this update package. That is not only the CU, the cumulative update of each month, but everything else that comes with this lifecycle controller. For you to just download this one package and run it, and make it easy, repeatable, and reliable. So I think the answer is already there, right? I mean, that's our engineering answer to that question is use LCM with 23H2 on whatever release. Yeah, I think that's my answer.
Yeah, and I think we're also a little bit dependent on the hardware side of things. So we also got the hardware vendors chiming in with their SBE, of course.
Yep.
It also does some magic.
Yeah, which actually it is a very good thing, right? Because if any of you, as I've been, like some of my peers before in the field, it happened probably 9 or 10 out of 10 times that you went to do an assessment to a customer, and then you realized that they were running 2 or 3 year old drivers. And many of the issues that they were facing were already solved. They just didn't apply them. So the fact that we're just getting this dependency on an SBE published by a given vendor like Dell, Lenovo, whatever, HP, etc., it is just goodness for the customer because it is the OEM vendor telling you, hey, in order to move forward, make sure you get updated, right? Including firmware, drivers, and so on, which is fundamental when we talk about infrastructure. And unfortunately, many customers, they don't feel that way. And now we're making it more, reliable because of that dependency being taken. So I love that.
Yep. Right. In case of a 0-day, what are the steps to install immediately the latest CU if no solution update is available?
Yeah, so I think, again, HCI is an open managed system, so you can technically download your whatever CU that it was released today or yesterday and then just apply it. That's fine with it. We don't recommend that approach because we want you to wait to have these validated recipe, because you might discover something that we are in the resolving process yet, right? Like, sometimes we adopt the OS package and then we mix it with our LCM components and we do all the validation and then we release it to you. In the case of a 0-day, you are entitled to go on download and install the CU by yourself, and that's fine. And then when the next solution update comes in, probably you've seen that we have multiple steps on any update and on the deployment. One of them goes and install the CU. When we get to that step on 3 weeks, 4 weeks ahead, we'll see that CU is already in place. We will skip that step and we'll keep going. So yeah, you can do that.
Yeah, but such a critical issue as a 0-day, is Microsoft also releasing an update, like a solution update quickly, or are they still maintaining the cadence?
So we didn't have that necessity yet up to date. I cannot confirm of any approach versus other. I can give you my 2 cents of what I think it might happen, but because it didn't happen and I don't have the right person here to tell you what would be the preference, I prefer not to comment on that one. What I can say is, hopefully we will get to that sooner releasing, but there is a reason why those solution updates comes later than the CUs. It's not just because we're just looking to the air thinking for days or weeks to pass it, because we're extensively validating all those different components. Already, right? I mean, HCI is a beast, right? I mean, it has so many components, from the infrastructure to the workloads, from AKS to the mock stack, right? Arc VMs, network controller, the deployment pieces, the LCM pieces, the OS pieces, and everything needs to just work fine, right? So for us to make all those validations takes some time, and we don't want to. I mean, if a 0-day is going to be solved by a CU, why you want to rush on the solution quality when you can just fix it? Just releasing the CU for that component. I don't know, a network component, to say something, a kernel component. I don't see the reason why we should rush it. That's my 2 cents.
And I'll also add that
I was about to
a cumulative update is different than a Windows update, right? So Microsoft, for 0 days and everything else, is releasing everything via Windows Update, and our assumption is always with HCI that people are running regular Windows Update, and that is going to address the time-sensitive security issues. And then, anything that's coming through a cumulative update is going to come through a different channel, but it won't be that same time sensitivity.
Makes sense. Yep. All right. Then we're letting you off the hook, Carlos, and we're moving on to networking. So
Thank you,
Christian's
guys.
coming back. Thanks, Carlos.
I guess this is me.
Let's see if I can add you to the spotlight as well. Yes, you are. Hello, Christian. How are you? Can you do a quick intro on yourself, please?
Well, I'm a PM on the HCI, essentially leading networking all up. And in some areas, I can go deeper. For example, our gateway or SDN. And in some other areas, I have a lot of peers working on those things. And because networking is across the entire platform. But yeah, that's my role.
Do you consider yourself a net ATC guru?
No, I'm not considering a guru of any of the network components because there are so many that it's impossible to be a guru on all of them.
All right, first question. Is there a disconnected cloud control plane available? And I'm assuming this is for SDN or logical networks, right?
I don't know the context, but if it's in the context of a pure cloud control plane disconnected, that's something I cannot talk about here. Some people in this call already knows the answer, but given this is not under NDA, it's a question that I need to skip. With my words, probably you're deducting something, but that's everything what I can talk.
Yeah. What about Windows Admin Center?
What happens with what is the context of the question with Windows Admin Center?
Can we do SDN or network management with Windows Admin Center for Azure HCI, for example, as a disconnected tool?
As a disconnected tool, meaning HCI disconnected from internet, or just
a tool?
Okay, that's another question. So today in HCI 23H2, the only option actually to do SDN as a GA is by using SDN Express and or WAC. Okay. What happens when you use this approach for SDN is that it's not ARC managed or it's not ARC enabled. So it means all the management and all the orchestration, all the life cycle of the SDN stack, it's kind of in your hands as customers, right? And it's the same you have been doing in the past, updating NC, updating maxes, updating gateways, backing up NC. All these kind of lifecycle operations are in the same way that you do SDN in Windows Server. That's one of the flavors. Now, the second flavor that we are working really hard, and we already have a private preview. Some of you have been playing around with this private preview. We are ARC enabling SDN resources, and we started with logical networks and network adapters and NSGs. We are aiming to do public preview of that in Q1, okay? And more type of resources will come after the public preview, okay? When we do this SDN as ARC managed, the first thing that changes is that network controller becomes a failover cluster service rather than running on VMs. So this is reducing the footprint of the HCI deployment considerably. And then the second thing that happens is that this SDN deployment or this network controller actually will be ARC enabled. It will be managed through MOG, and then you will be able to manage all the resources in Azure. And the aim is that in the future, you will be able to manage the entire SDN stack that in a way that you can do in Azure or with all the features that you have in WAC or SDN Express.
Got it. So the management's coming to ARM, right? As an ARM resource. what happens if you lose connectivity to internet? Are you still able to manage it locally?
No. What happens with this new SDN flavor that is Arc managed is that those resources that are that will be or are Arc managed can only be managed through Arc. Okay, so you will need connectivity. The resources that are still not Arc managed, meaning you can have this hybrid configuration where you deploy SDN as a failover cluster service, but then you want to deploy VNets or load balancers or gateways because we don't have them yet enabled in Arc. Those can be managed through WAC or XDN Express, but the ones that are already supported in and managed in Arc will require Azure connectivity for the control plane.
All right, nice. And so there's some NDA stuff. Do we need to look out for Ignite then for that kind of announcements? You have a session that you recommend?
Not for SDN. We will make the announcement that the public preview is coming, but I'm not sure, but probably we will not disclose any date about the public preview. But as I said, you should expect public preview SDN Q1.
Okay. What is the best way to limit and control the number of external endpoints the nodes are required to have connectivity?
Yeah, that's one of my favorite topics since 1 year ago. So limit the number of endpoints. It's not possible. The number of endpoints are documented in GitHub. I'm maintaining all this list of endpoints personally. I still own to add 3 more regions that is just about timing and I don't have enough time. But you need to open those endpoints in your firewall or whitelist them in your proxy. Okay. How you can improve that cumbersome experience, this pain, is why we are releasing the Arc Gateway. As you know, Arc Gateway is in a gated public preview. We are going to move to public preview really, really soon. You will see an announcement potentially today for the Arc for Servers side, and you will see a follow-up announcement for HCI, because Arc Gateway in HCI is a different setup than for Arc for Servers. And right now, we will reduce from more than 100 endpoints with this public preview to around 30 endpoints, which is 70% reduction. And let's say early next year, we will reduce these 30 endpoints to potentially 15. Okay. So that will be my recommendation. If you want to reduce the pain and the cumbersome of managing all these endpoints in your firewalls or proxies, I highly encourage you to use the Arc Gateway, even if it's still in public preview phase. There is a lot of investment on this area. There are some limitations, of course, yet that we are planning to solve, but I really encourage everyone to join this public preview for Arc Gateway and start doing some tests.
Yeah, I think the best place to find out these endpoints are in the documentation, and it's linking to a GitHub repository, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Next question, and this question also shows we just copy paste the questions from the input forms. Does Azure Stack HCI will support private endpoints?
Without disclosing anything, this is a really important point for us to solve. But we are working on a, let's say, short-term solution. And also we are already starting the design phase for, let's say, long-term final solution for that.
Right. Next one is on TLS inspection. Does Azure HCI support it?
No. Please, no. And I want to make a big no. HCI does not support SSL or TLS inspection, period. And the reason for that is not because some components support it, some others not. That's the problem. Some components does support SSL inspection. Some components in the entire HCI stack does not support. SSL inspection. But as an overall product, HCI, we cannot support SSL inspection. Being said that, there are things that can be done for some specific endpoints or customer requirements. And if you're interested on them, just let me know. But as MVPs here or also as customers, the main point should be HCI today does not support SSL inspection.
Right. What are the future plans of SDN for Azure HCI and portal integration?
I kind of cover that, right? The idea
Yes.
is that we will have logical networks management, which is a type of resource that does not exist in Azure, because in Azure we don't have to manage the physical layer. But once we have consolidated LNets, NSGs, and network adapters, we are moving towards virtual networks, which should be same or almost same experience than in Azure. We will have load balancers, we will have gateways, and then from that, once we reach the gateways, we will probably keep adding all the features that you can already do today in SDN through WAC or through SDN Express.
Right. And I just want to make sure that everyone understands that if we're saying SDN, we're not specifically saying VXLAN. So this can also be, this is just management that can be also VLANs, right? So logical networks, just to make sure that we're not only talking about virtualized networking.
Yeah.
And we got a Q&A question coming in. Last one. In Azure HCI cluster, what is the optimum way to prepare SDN logic and management for multi-tenancy usage?
Let's say that today multi-tenancy does not exist from SDN perspective until we get to VNets, right? And VXLAN encapsulation that you just mentioned. So, and this is purely network layer perspective, right? If you need this multi-tenancy support today in HCI, you need to go with this out-of-band SDN using legacy tools, SDN Express or WAC, where each user will be able to have their own VNets. But eventually, when this gets managed as our resources, we will be able to have different users in Azure having different VNets in the system, and this will become more multi-tenancy all stack. But today, from network perspective, the only way to do multi-tenancy is through SDN out-of-band deployment.
Got it. And that was your last question, Christian.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being here.
I need to drop. Thank you, everyone.
See ya. Bye-bye. All right.
I think Defender is me.
Yes. I'm searching for the place to highlight you. Yes, here we are. Hello, Ellie. How are you?
Good. How are you? Thanks for having us.
Great to have you. Can you talk a little bit about what you do within Microsoft?
Sure. So I'm a PM on the Azure Stack HCI PM team along with Christian, and I own the infra management for HCI in the Azure portal, including security management in this context. So Defender integration and any security UX blades. It's all me.
Cool. Then the first question is a good one, I guess. How does Azure Stack HCI integrate with Defender?
Of course. So Azure Stack HCI is integrated with Microsoft Defender for Cloud in kind of several ways. So HCI, obviously, you run VMs and workloads on top of it. So you can use Defender to manage the security posture of the hosts itself, as well as the cluster. So the HCI cluster resource shows up as an ARM object, as well as the individual hosts. Both can be managed through Microsoft Defender for Cloud. You get specific recommendations about how to improve the security posture of your hosts. So if any of the settings that may or may not have been configured during deployment are not properly configured anymore, you will get a Defender recommendation to kind of go remediate them for things like secured core, for example. So that's how Defender supports the infrastructure. And then for the workloads on top, Defender fully supports any virtualized VM or AKS cluster running on the cluster. So Defender has like a whole swath of features. I won't get into all of them. There's a lot of great documentation out there. But you can turn on individual paid plans for each of those resources as well. So you can turn on Defender for servers to get enhanced security features for the hosts as well as guest VMs. And then you can also turn on Defender for containers if you're running any AKS clusters. And then again, the documentation lists all the different features you get for those various plans. But I think the main takeaway is that you can use Defender for both the infrastructure as well as the workloads.
Nice. And so what does the management experience look like then? Do you also get those nice scores of how secure a cluster is?
Oh, yes. So the secure score that you're alluding to, each recommendation in Defender is kind of scored on how it impacts your security posture. So the HCI recommendations, they're currently in preview, so they don't contribute to a secure score because they are a preview recommendation. But as soon as they become generally available, they will also have a weight attached and will contribute to the secure score. But any pre-existing Defender recommendations that apply to virtual machines or containers will apply to the workloads running on HCI and will accumulate to that secure score.
Nice. Right, next question. What and how much are the costs if a new customer wants to use MDC only for SDK HCI?
Yes. So I have the pricing page pulled up on the other side of my screen so I don't misquote anything. But I do encourage you to go to the pricing plan to kind of look at the different options. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud, for the most part, is enabled at the subscription level, which means you would enroll your subscription in whatever plans apply to your resources, and then any resources that you add to that subscription are automatically enrolled. So if today you have one HCI cluster that are 2 nodes, and you turn on Defender for servers, those 2 nodes will automatically get enrolled. And then if tomorrow you deploy another HCI cluster that has 2 nodes, those 2 nodes are also enrolled in Defender for servers because, again, it's enabled at the subscription level. So what does that actually cost? Defender has lots of different plans. They kind of have a freemium model. So kind of starting at the bottom and then going upwards. The foundational CSPM or Cloud Security Posture Management is completely free. As I mentioned before, there's like very many tables in their documentation that kind of has like a check mark of each of the features you get for the various plans. So I encourage you to look there. But foundational CSPM is free. Defender CSPM, which is like a slightly enhanced version of the Cloud Security Posture Management plan, that is $5. This is in USD, by the way. $5.11 per billable resource per month. I encourage you to look at that footnote. Not all of your resources are billable for Defender CSPM because not every resource gets enhanced features under that plan. So that's Cloud Security Posture Management. And then moving to Cloud Workload Protection, Defender for Servers Plan 1 is USD $4 and roughly 91 cents per server per month. They are billed hourly as well. So if you have machines or VMs that are not running 24/7, your cost will be slightly less than this. These are all hourly or monthly rates. And then Defender for Servers Plan 2 in USD is $14.60 per server per month. And then last but not least, for Defender for Containers, it is USD $6.8693 per vCore per month. Again, if it was billed hourly, it's like a few cents.
Right. And so can I summarize that it's a pay-as-you-go model? So you have, let's say you have one subscription, you have one SDK HCI cluster in there, and you pay per node or workload. Okay, got it. Thank you. Next question. SDK HCI nodes comes with Defender AV antivirus. How it compares with Defender for Endpoint?
I'm actually going to phone a friend, and Carlos will be answering this question.
Hello.
Easy.
Hey, Ellie. So for those, for some of you, it would be easy answer, which is Defender AV or Defender Anti-Malware is an HCN antivirus that is built in the US. while the Defender for Endpoint is for Microsoft EDR solution. And so that's the main difference, right? So the EDR solution from Microsoft called Defender for Endpoint, which can be actually licensed through MDC, right, Ellie? In one of those server plans that you can choose. It's this additional layer of analytics that streams data to the cloud to be analyzed and to be alerted and create incidents on your behalf, right? So these incident and response capability coming from the cloud on the Microsoft 365 Defender solution. That's basically the answer. So one complements the other. Yeah.
Got it. And now that I still have you here, Carlos, because this was the last question for Defender. So if you have a question on Defender, please shoot in a question to the Q&A while we still have Ellie here. And I'll take a other question on hardening. So we got a question in, do you consider to provide Windows Server 2025 and Windows 11 AVD images in Azure Marketplace that follow your security hardening baseline?
Sorry, which one you want me to answer first? The letter? Because I just forgot the previous one. Okay, so the letter is Marketplace images, right?
Yep.
So generally speaking, the team solution for hardening images so far, that accrues not only to workloads that you can deploy to HCI, but even other forms of Windows Server flavors or Windows 11 flavors, is to leverage the baseline that we create for them. In the context of Windows Server, many might not know this yet, but we just recently GA Server 25, and that comes along with opinionated security baseline that can be ingested through OS config. Probably that's the reason why we had that first question in today's AMA. So customers who create those images can download those images, apply the security baseline, test it, and then make it available from themselves on the HCI ecosystem. That would be a two-step process. We are not planning, or at least I am not aware of any plans to bring first-party images with this predefined baseline yet. But again, if it's something that you would love to see, please let us your feedback, right? We're always eager to learn what is more needed, because at the end of the day, we just work for you, right? To make your life easier. So if that's something that will have a big impact on your day-to-day operations, I would like to know more about that. And you would need to repeat me the previous one, Daryl. I just don't recall it.
No, I think that was the one. Okay. You covered it. Yep.
And I'll also add there a little bit, like, this is what's beneficial of HCI as a product. And so one of the challenges with the Windows security baselines is that they are best practices, right? All the hardening stuff is best practices. But when you're talking general purpose images, it's hard to understand what somebody's context is going to be in terms of what their organization is like. Do they need NTLM? Just all that kind of stuff. And so the thing that I'm proud of HCI, of us being able to do, is to say, we can have a bit more of an opinionated product stance here. We know which computers are connected to which. We can disable local accounts, the things that I think generally folks recognize as being best practices. And in the product context, we can trim them down. And so that's why you're getting additional value with HCI in its more opinionated context than a general purpose image.
Yep, makes sense. Thanks. All right. Thank you, Ellie, for your contributions here. We're moving on to cloud management.
I think that's me again.
Yeah, you again, right? Yeah, I was doubting it a little bit. Okay, so cloud management. First question is, when security default features can be managed from the portal?
Yeah, great question. And I think it's worth calling out that these sections are back to back, and I'm answering both of them because they are tightly integrated. So you don't have to use Microsoft Defender for Cloud to manage the security posture of your Azure Stack HCI infrastructure, as well as the workloads. We have UX, as this is mentioning, that's built right into the portal, but they do work hand in hand very well together. They are tightly integrated. So now to answer the question, when can security defaults be managed from the portal? As this question is alluding to, much of the security UX we provide today is read-only. We will be providing configuration through the Azure portal next year, calendar year 2025. I don't want to commit publicly to any timelines, but I would say keep an eye out for like middle to late calendar year 2025 for the general availability of those features.
So these are the security defaults that come with the deployment, right?
Yes.
What we're talking about, right? Okay. So changing BitLocker volumes and hardening. Okay, got it. When can we see a compliance management view, I guess, including Purview integration?
Yep. So there's kind of a few things to answer with this question. The first one of Azure Stack HCI integration with, I'm presuming this means Microsoft Defender for Cloud's regulatory compliance feature. It is on our roadmap. I don't have any timelines that I can share publicly right now, but I am very curious to hear people's feedback about like what would be useful to them. So feel free to like drop it in the Q&A. I can record it from there, as well as whichever regulatory standards would be most applicable to your use case. And then in the meantime, we do have a very comprehensive assurance portal on Microsoft Learn that details how you can configure your HCI systems to be compliant with the most popular standards. Of course, this is not like a promise of compliance, but it kind of breaks down the different controls of various regulatory standards and then how you can use HCI features to be compliant with those different standards. So that is available on Microsoft Learn today. It's like in the left-hand nav all the way at the bottom. I believe it's under references or resources. We have a whole dedicated section called assurance, and it covers kind of like the most common standards. All right, moving on to the Purview piece. So Microsoft Defender for Cloud integration with Microsoft Purview is available today. I was just reading up on their docs before this, that within Compliance Manager in Microsoft Purview, data from MDC will surface in the Assessments and Improvement Actions section. The one kind of catch to make this work is that the regulatory standard in question must be supported by both MDC and Purview, such that that data can be plumbed to both tools. But the list of regulations that is supported by both is quite extensive and includes many of the more popular standards, such as FedRAMP, high and moderate, ISO 27001, NIST, and PCI DSS. And then, again, I encourage you to read the documentation. There's kind of step-by-step about how you can connect MDC with Purview.
All right. Next one is coverage on the government cloud. Where and when?
Yes, so Azure Stack HCI version 22H2 is available in Azure Gov today. Azure Stack HCI version 23H2, that is our latest generally available version, is coming soon. No dates can be shared publicly at this time. However, if we have any Gov customers on the call who are under NDA, you can engage with your Microsoft point of contacts and they can share a more detailed roadmap.
Nice. Last question from my side then. What is the coolest thing you're working on that you can share publicly?
Oh, that's a good question. What is the coolest thing I'm working on? It's not necessarily specific to security, but we have some cool Copilot integration for infra management in the works.
Nice. Thank you. All right. Now we're moving on to the next section and the next speaker. So thank you for chiming in.
Thank you.
Kareem is up.
Yes, can you guys hear me?
Hear you and see you now.
Okay, cool.
Hello, Kareem. How are you?
Good, how are you?
You in the office?
Yes.
Nice. Can you introduce yourself a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Kerim Hanif. I am working in HCI for the past 5 years. And I'm responsible from the backup, ASR, and also some other features.
All right. And we got some questions that came in on this part. And the first one is, how and when can we use Azure Site Recovery and Azure Backup?
Okay. So thinking about the business continuity scenarios for HCI, so these are like they're both needed, and they're both are valid scenarios for a server or actually a host on that is running HCI, right? So for example, most of the customers, what we see is like they obviously they have their own nightly backups, and they also have their like weekly backups and monthly, and like it rolls down to like yearly, and then they also is completely needed and completely necessary. But there are also some like VMs that are that needs to be kept pretty up to date, and they're mission critical, and they cannot like be they don't actually have the luxury of like restoring from backup like and spend hours downtime, right? So they need to be up and running like all the time. So for those VMs, definitely Azure Site Recovery is the requirement. But again, those VMs that are, let's say, doing like a replication to Azure, that VM also needs to be backed up. So both scenarios are valid, because imagine in a scenario where, let's say, you have a corruption, right? And this ASR actually replicates this VM every 30 seconds. You can go down to every 30 seconds. Normally it's 5 minutes, but you can go down to every 30 seconds. It's replicated to Azure. So that corruption will be replicated, right? So when you fail over this server or the VM in Azure, you have the corruption, right? So then like in the other like in that case, you need to restore it from backup. So I think it's important to actually know that like both are valid scenarios for HCI, and most of the I think the most important thing is like if you want this VM to be up and running, most of the time if it's mission critical, all the VMs needs to be backed up, and for those mission critical systems, you also need to add ASR.
Right. So it's a discussion on RPO, RTO. Right?
Exactly.
So how fast do you want to be up? Where can you
Exactly.
restore to corruption? Okay. And so what are the scenarios for Azure Site Recovery? Can we do Azure HCI to Azure, or can we do other stuff?
Yeah. So ASR by default. So just to explain a little bit of like what we have, like the flavor of ASR we have in HCI, right? So ASR is a generally available product in Azure, right? You can do Azure VMs, you can do ASR to another region, to a services recovery services vault, and you can restore Azure VMs from within the Azure already, right? And the other generally available feature is Hyper-V VM to Azure replication and failback is also GA. But that in order to configure that, and as you know, all the HCI servers are also Hyper-V servers. So in theory, you can actually do that manual installation and configuration on HCI nodes as well. But that requires a lot of manual intervention, because, like, for example, first you need to download the agents. You need to prepare the infrastructure, on-premises infrastructure. You need to download the agents. You need to install the agents. And then there's an MSI that you need to download. You need to create the recovery services vault. You need to generate a key from that recovery services vault. You need to install that MSI locally on-prem. You need to use that key that you generated to register that node to ASR. Then you need to create a policy. You need to register that policy. So there are like so many different manual steps. And then you need to repeat that on each node of the cluster. Right. So today this is possible. It is GA It is generally available, and it can be used for HCI. Okay. What we did last year, I think May of last year, is we created this ASR extension, which is an ARC extension, and it actually contains all the Mars agent, the DRA agent, disaster recovery agent, and the Microsoft Azure site recovery agent, which is Mars. It stands for Mars. Those agents, that registration process, the policy assignment process, all of them are all in, like created as a package and we call this ASR extension. Okay, so which is available as a preview. So like I said, the ASR extension is a great convenience feature. Like you can just go in and prepare your infrastructure in, like you can go to Azure Stack HCI cluster, go to disaster recovery, which says in preview today. It's in public preview. And then you can say prepare my infrastructure. And since you're on the cluster, it actually shows you the nodes that, let's say you have 2 nodes. And then if you say prepare my infrastructure, it goes ahead, installs the agent on one node, registers the node, assigns the policy, assigns to the Hyper-V site. All of those things you can create from within the wizard that comes up when you prepare the infrastructure, and then goes to the next node. All of that does all of those things and completes the deployment. So it's a super convenient way to install ASR. Okay, but it has some like known issues right now. We are trying to solve them so that we can actually release this as a GA. And like I can actually mention some of them. Like one of them is the ASR extension. If you go through the ASR extension deployment method, it doesn't support proxies. So if your installation requires proxy, we don't have that yet. The WDAC enforced mode, which is by default, like you heard today, is like it cannot install there, but we fix that. So all of these, like the issues that we know of are fixed, and we are actually testing the agent, the new XR extension with these fixes right now. So it's hopefully going to be published first, like quarter of next year.
Right, to be general available.
But it will be, we're trying to make it generally available in this semester, but at least the agent that has these fixes will be available. It will still stay in preview for some time in case if we find some more issues. But after that, like my goal is to GA this as soon as possible. But again, like for the customers, they're not blocked, so they can still use the manual installation method of ASR. Right. And do the disaster recovery that way.
And so, when do you expect to be the extension to be stable?
Again, like next year, first half of next year, like we're basically like constantly testing it, and we have some.
I mean, like, in preview. I mean. So are the initial bugs already out now, and can we test it as an extension, or do we still need to wait like a month?
No, so we still need to like it's in the, so we basically, when we publish these fixes, we first install it in this like a region that we can test. It's not public region. It's called Canary region. So we're trying to publish it to Canary region right now. Okay. But we have some Azure blockages because of the holidays, so we are stuck right now publishing it to Canada.
And so about the scenario, so we can do Azure Stack HCI to Azure. Can we also do Azure Stack HCI to Azure Stack HCI?
No, you cannot do HCI to HCI. So the scenarios are supported that will be supported in this first version of, let's say just call it V1 of this, is that you will be able to replicate a VM from on-premises HCI class HCI to Azure, okay? and then you can fail back to Azure. You can also, on premises. So actually, let me back up. So you can actually do a replication from on premises to Azure. You can do a test replication, test
failover.
Test failover, and you can see you can actually provide a different network, so you can test, if it's all looking right or not, and then you can clean it up, and then you can do a planned failover or you can do an unplanned failover. Those are the two options. Okay. Planned failover shuts down the VM, and the unplanned failover asks you, do you want me to try to shut down or whatever. So, and then you can actually do a fail back, which is from Azure to on-premises to the original instance where the VM came from.
Okay. And is Microsoft thinking about an HCI to HCI DR?
So we are considering it, yes, but it's still in planning phases.
Okay.
And I would need some evidence to strengthen my case. So if you guys have customers that need this, please let me know, ping me individually, and let me know the customer and their scenario. I would really appreciate that.
I can help with that, I think. Yeah.
Awesome.
Could make it happen. Yeah.
Nice.
Next question is, are previous PCDR tools compatible with Arc for VMs?
Okay, that's a great question. So also we didn't talk about like the backup part. Backup is we currently support the Microsoft Azure Backup Server, MAPS for short, and MAPS is very super similar to DPM. If you guys, I know you are familiar with System Center Data Protection Manager, and all of these things that we talked about, like when you're restoring the VM, I said most of the customers, they want to like do nightly backups, and then the weekly backups, they actually want to keep it in Azure. The maps actually allows you to configure all of these things by default. So you can actually set your policies so that, the nightly, like 5 days, like the backups kept local, and then the 6-day backup kept in Azure. Where do you want to keep it? Where do you want to keep it in local? You can provide the storage in Azure. You can provide the, the storage as well in Azure. So all of those things are coordinated, and then actually the uploads and everything is automatic. Like the 6-day backup automatically goes to Azure, those kind of things. So it's very convenient in that way. So coming back to Arc VMs, the Arc VMs, as you know, are like, just to, if you want to just simplify what an Arc VM is, just to clarify what Arc VM is that what we call Arc VM is Arc enabled server, which is just any VM or any VM that has a connected machine agent, Arc connected machine agent installed, plus imagine that VM running on HCI, right? So if that VM is running on HCI plus has the agent, then what we call this like a guest enabled Arc VM. So in this case, what do you get? You get lifecycle management, meaning you can start the VM, stop the VM, you can save, pause, all those things. Plus you can add a disk, you can add just like a regular VM, like you would expect to do in a regular VM, you can add a NIC. All those options are there for you. So that comes because the VM is running on HCI, because it's running on Arc Resource Bridge. The other thing that you get because of the agent is monitoring what we've talked about, Defender for Cloud, log analytics, the updates, all those things comes with the the agent brings, right? So combining what we call this an Arc VM. So when you do a backup of an Arc VM and restore of an Arc VM, we have to we have to protect all these, like what I talked about, right? And then restore them when it's restored, or if it failed back in the ASR case, right? So you can do this to the original instance. So let's say you're coming from cluster A and you ASR this to Azure, you failed over to Azure, now you fail back to cluster A again, all works fine. Arc VMs are Arc VMs. You can see it under, you go to HCI cluster in Azure, you can still see the VM, you can still manage the VM, right? But let's say something happened and you have to restore it to an alternate cluster, right? This VM didn't originate it from. In that case, the VM loses the lifecycle management capabilities. Because it still has the agent, right? So the agent, you can still do monitoring, you can still do all of those things, but you will not be able to see this VM under Azure Stack HCI virtual machines view in Azure portal. It will disappear from there. So we are working on a feature called, code name or internally we call it hydration, to register that VM to the Arc resource bridge of that cluster B.
Got it,
So
yeah.
that's so in that sense, to summarize, Arc VMs are supported if you restore or fail back to the original instance. But if you need to go to an alternate location, then it's not supported.
Okay.
They're not
Yeah, there were
supported.
2 questions on this, and so you already said that Microsoft calls this hydration, and so I know you're working hard on it because we have been pushing on it as well. So that's coming, and it's also very important for backup vendors, obviously, to restore VMs and still be able to hydrate those VMs into Azure. Okay, thank you, Karim. I need to go to the next session, otherwise we don't make
Sure.
it. Thank you for your input.
Yeah.
See you soon.
Of course. Yeah.
Thanks. All right, last section coming up, and the last section is confidential compute.
All right. Hey, everyone.
Hey, Deepak, good to see you.
See you too. I highlighted myself. I spotlighted myself, rather.
Yeah, that's good. Can you do a quick introduction of yourself?
Sure. Hey, everyone. I run the PM team leading the security for Azure Stack HCI. So super excited to be here and super thankful for Daryl, Carlos, and everybody else who's presented on the various security aspects. I think it's been a great set of questions, and looking forward to answering topics on confidential compute and other security topics in general as well.
Cool. We're also very glad to have you. So we got 2 nice questions on confidential compute. The first one is, what can you tell us on confidential compute for Azure Stack HCI in general?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think when we think of confidential compute on Azure Stack HCI, there are a few reasons that we sort of think about this. Number one, it starts off with sort of like Azure cloud consistency. Our customers, we've heard customers sort of embrace confidential compute in the Azure cloud. And those customers are asking for similar functionality on their on-premises when they're running their local on-premises data centers. We've obviously had previous attempts of similar or roughly equivalent functionality, such as shielded VMs. So that's another angle why customers come and ask us about. They obviously don't come and ask, connect the dots between shielded VM and confidential compute, but that is a roughly equivalent technology. From a use case standpoint, I actually would love to hear from this audience, and please go ahead and put that into the Q&A. The various use cases. Some of the use cases that we have heard are things in different, varies from industry to industry. So, for example, in the pharmaceutical industry, we hear about drug development being one of the key use cases. Folks know, I'm sure you folks know that there's a lot of proprietary data that is being processed to prepare drugs, and these are very expensive databases. And there's a lot of combination of data that needs to be combined to be able to understand which of these data sets and match up the various protein ligands, etc., and how you actually sort of target these drugs. So that's one use case. Then other use cases is obviously AI, where AI is being utilized in a wide variety of verticals. One vertical is in retail. In the retail vertical, theft loss is a top concern for our retail partners, and these customers are applying solutions which process video feeds, and then they are generating insights on whether there's a potential theft loss situation or not. So in addition to the privacy of what is seen in the video feeds, the insights generated are even more sensitive. So that's another data set that they want to protect. And of course, when these AI ISVs are running their AI models in store, the AI model itself has model weights which need to be protected. So as a case in point, if you think about like Azure AI, the Microsoft is spending hundreds of millions of dollars or even more to sort of train those models. If somebody gets access to the model weights, the entire model weight can be easily stolen. So that's another protection scenario as well. So these are some of the use cases that we're hearing. And if you are hearing other use cases, please do put it in the Q&A, and super happy to follow up offline.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, so I was very thinking about shielded VMs use cases. So someone picks up my physical machine and is not able to start VMs on it and that kind of stuff. But the use case that you just said also definitely makes sense. Yeah. Let's see if someone from the Q&A comes in. You just posed a question. If you can see the question by Deepak, then you can vote on it.
Yeah, and I can add a couple of things. I don't know if you have another question, Daryl. If not, I can add a few more things on this point as well. But
yeah, go ahead. I think we're on time now, so
okay,
let's do 1 minute.
Sounds good. Yeah. So as a first step to sort of confidential compute as a collection of technologies, we are positioning trusted launch Arc VMs in this under this umbrella as well. Trusted launch Arc VMs, if folks know, brings the ability to have high availability plus also VTPM and secure boot for your VMs. In the past, if you had to enable VTPM, you would essentially sort of need to give up on high availability. So you wouldn't have live migration and failover. With trusted launch Arc VMs, we enable customers to have both. So the scenario here would be, so let's say you enable BitLocker, for example, on one of your Windows VMs. And if you do it on just a standard Gen 2 VM, and if that VM needs to live migrate, then the VTPM state is not migrated to the other node, and then BitLocker would throw up a recovery situation. But with a trusted launch VM, the VTPM state is also migrated, and as such, BitLocker would not throw up the recovery screen. So that's sort of a core tenet when we think about this TVM. And similarly for, again, down the road, when we think about confidential compute, we want to sort of ensure customers there's a thoughtful interaction between the trade-off for production usage while also achieving the confidentiality promises.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. That makes sense. Thanks for that addition. We're over time a little bit already, so I'm going to end the meeting. I want to thank everyone for joining, obviously. It was a long time since we had a virtual meeting, so it's good to have one again. And we'll probably have some more coming up, especially after Ignite. I would recommend everyone watching to also watch Ignite. I know there's some good stuff coming up. So please look out to the Azure HCI sessions, and also the Windows Server sessions would be nice. So thank you, Deepak, and thanks, Carlos, for setting this up. And thanks everyone for joining. You can find me on LinkedIn or on Slack, the Azure HCI Slack. And if you have any feedback, just ping me. Right. Thank you all, and see you somewhere.
Thank you, Daryl. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.